All right, all you freedom-loving boys and girls, Mark here at the Bunker, Mission Critical Podcast, Episode 5. Tonight's conversation, we're just going to kind of jump in. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We'll do some very brief introductions, and then we're going to get into the heart of this. But tonight, our conversation tonight is going to be part 2 of our conversation regarding why are we still in NATO, right? That's going to be the gist of it. That'll be a little bit more clear how we're going to go in a few seconds. But before I get into some of the housekeeping and then the actual conversation, basic introductions, we're going to keep this short because if you don't know who we already are, I mean, you're here watching us, so you probably have seen our previous videos. But if this is the first time you're catching our podcast, go back and watch one of the previous videos where we give a detailed accounting of who we are, our backgrounds, and why we're doing this stuff. But suffice it to say, I'm one of your hosts. I'm Mark, and
I am Redbeard or Jeremy,
aka ACDC. Read his little
right.
ticker. And then down below, the way we've got it set up right now is our second time special guest, Russ in the house.
Russ.
Well, that was pretty good.
I am, in fact, Russ.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, can you make that high-pitched noise again? That was pretty impressive. Hey, can you do Michael Jackson impersonations?
No.
Whoa, that was pretty good.
Any impersonation.
That was pretty good. Hey, so seriously, we're very happy to have Russ on here a
100%.
second time. We really enjoyed talking with Russ. We think Russ brings not just that nice high-pitched voice to the table, but some really good salient points. All right, so without further ado, we're going to get into the meat of the podcast, which again, this is part 2 of a conversation of why are we in NATO, or why does NATO exist? If you didn't see part 1, go back and watch it. You know, we've only done 5 podcasts. It won't be hard to find. But before we get into the meat of it, I got 2 pieces of housekeeping I want to share. First piece of housekeeping is, all right, look, everybody, we're just a bunch of knuckleheads. We're doing this because we believe in it. We think, you know, there's no way you can be silent anymore. You have to get out there. You have to state an opinion. You have to be able to do so objectively, back it up with facts, be an adult, listen to other people's, arguments and their points, counterpoints, without calling them names and ad hominem attacks, things of that nature. So the first piece of housekeeping is just how incredibly impressed and, I don't know, Jeremy, I can't speak for you, but like, wow, I mean, is the word that comes to my mind.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, we've already had a lot of views on the first video was just a lot of housekeeping.
Yep.
Blah, blah. But video 2 or video 3, episode 3, that's the NATO part 1. Not only has a whole bunch of views. I mean, for us, it's a lot of views. I know it's for like Joe Rogan, that's nothing. But for us, I'm really impressed that this many people have watched it so far. I'm also impressed YouTube hasn't canceled it. But so the first piece of housekeeping, well, and not only just the views, but more importantly, how many people took the time out of their day to not just only write a response like hey guys, Mark's beard is really cool, but took the time to actually write out long, detailed, cogent responses backing up their perspectives and their arguments. So first piece of housekeeping is we're going to raise our glasses. Now, I don't know if Russ is drinking alcohol tonight. No,
I have a Topo Chico.
What is that? Gesundheit.
Carbonated mineral water.
Okay, so all right. So I'm the only person who's really raising his glass to you guys. But so take it from the heart. Jeremy's got his tea. Russ is drinking whatever the hell that is. But hey, seriously, here's to all you guys. Thank you very much. That's just awesome. And Jeremy's going to kind of go into this a little bit too. But that is exactly what we're looking for. I mean, that type of engagement, it's so refreshing to see people actually want to speak and respond. And so here's to all of you guys and gals. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. And I want to just quickly make the point to say that we are grateful is an understatement.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, like to say that we're grateful to get that engagement. Like the first couple of videos, I was like, okay, this is kind of a good metric. But when that NATO video dropped and we started to see a lot of the comments trickle in, and I actually think the VA video is going to do well too. But when I looked at NATO and I evaluated it, I was like, this is some really good feedback. Like people actually had quite a bit to say. We had some newcomers. So overall, like just wanted to say that we're super grateful. We're really happy to have, returning people and as well as new people coming back to check this out. And that's basically all I have. So thank you very much.
And so yeah, again, really you got to be on our side to what Jeremy said. It's hard to describe. I could only come up with wall because I'm kind of dumbfounded. It's like, seriously, wow. Here's to all you guys one more time.
Hats off to you guys.
Yeah,
really.
Seriously. Yeah. Hats off and cheers.
So,
yep.
And so that's the last piece of housekeeping. I'm going to kind of use that to segue into. We're going to do a slightly different format tonight. We're going to see how it goes. But so leave a comment, even, you know, on like whether you like this new format we're about to
absolutely engage too.
Yep.
We love engagement.
Yep.
So
but
any feedback or any comments is great.
Yeah, but then not just on the new format, but as Jeremy's saying, the engagement, because part of the new system that we're going to try based on the level of comments and feedback we received on just the N.A.T.O one. Episode 4 is still over on. Well, actually, I think episode 4 is now live on our YouTube channel today, but it was residing over at Black Scout Survival's Discord channel. And so if you haven't watched the previous videos, we shoot these videos. It goes over on Black Scout's Survival's Discord for a couple days. So, you know, like we're always just like one cycle behind because, you know, it takes time. We got to shoot the video. We got to process it, upload it, right? So, but one of the things, because of the engagement, is based on that, we're contemplating, like, look, some of you have made some just incredibly well thought out and well-made statements, put together statements. Don't be surprised if we reach out to you and say, hey, that was really good. And as a result of that level of engagement, or people seem to really like that topic, we'll do a part 2 or a part 3, whatever it is. And we might be reaching out to you and asking you to be down 100%. Here where Russ is right now and joining us and sharing your comments if you're willing to do so. So that's housekeeping. Did I forget anything on housekeeping, Jeremy?
I think that's it. I think that was a good summarization of what we talked about. So
okay. So we're at almost 7 minutes. So I'm just going to do one last little comment and then we're going to turn it over to Jeremy. So we're going to continue the conversation about N.A.T.O. The question is, why are we in N.A.T.O? Why does N.A.T.O exist? Is this something we really should be a participant of? You know, like see the previous video for some of our basic, our baseline arguments or our points of intersection into this argument. We're going to expound upon those a little bit tonight, but then kind of the last piece of housekeeping is the new system that we're going to try is we're going to go kind of, and there's no real rhyme or reason, but one person's going to make a statement and then the other 2 people will have a chance to respond to that statement, add to it, you know, make counter arguments or agree or disagree. And then it'll go to somebody else to make their statement and then vice versa. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. But so that's it for the housekeeping. So on that note, Jeremy's going to start us. I'm sorry, Russ is going to start us off.
Yep.
Russ is going to start us off. So let me get Russ up here full screen. And Russ, go ahead, take us away. Again, the point here is N.A.T.O. Should we be in N.A.T.O? Should N.A.T.O even exist anymore? And now Russ is going to start us off.
So the more I come on here, I think people will start to notice that I like to dissect things, you know, starting at the beginning or the outside, if you will, scientifically. So let's just quick review. What is N.A.T.O? The North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Why was it ever conceived of? After World War II, after World War I, and World War II for that matter, a lot of stuff has developed in the form of humans trying to kill other humans. Some of it super duper evil, and we recognized that we needed a way to restrict, govern, hold accountable everybody else. So NATO, NATO was formed. They took the role of basically governor of war around the world. That's why we have NATO rounds, because those rounds are approved of as human killing devices that are not too extreme. They kill you just right. You know, gas, nope. Landmines, those are out. But rocket propelled grenades, yeah, that's all right. Drones, we'll see. Maybe NATO has something to say about it. Maybe they don't. But my point is the crux of my point is based off of what NATO was originally started for, which was not a bad idea. We really saw after the 2 big wars that there's got to be something, right? Because otherwise we're just going to get way ahead of ourselves. But do we still need that? Has NATO really done much for us. I mean, it's cool that they make sure that we're not killing each other too badly. But outside of that, what's the deal? When is the last time anybody can remember they did something significant, saved the day, if you will, won a war or stopped a war? I mean, I remember they had some action in Africa, and I mean, the scale that they're at over there is nothing like whole countries annihilating whole other countries, right? So that's my point. Based off of the historical beginnings, it's not a bad idea, but what do we still need it, And I know that's the crux of it. So that's the crux of tonight anyway.
Yep.
Oh, Mark.
You're muted, Mark.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Hey, I apologize, everyone. Technical difficulties in the studio. Damn interns, you should know better. Anyway, back on point here.
That's just his dog he's talking to.
Russ, not to put you on the spot, but can you expound upon it a little bit? And now take that what you just said, which I totally really like, but then apply it to the Cold War Russia. Give a little bit more of your personal thoughts and experience, because NATO's role in that, then, right? See what I'm saying?
Yeah. So NATO, in its role of preventing.
Or I should have said the Soviet Union. Excuse me.
Yeah. So in its role of preventing harsh wars, right? There had to be invested parties, right? Like key stakeholders, if you will, and the big stakeholders at the time was us, the U.S., Russia, and Britain. Even though Britain isn't volume-wise large, they are pretty well established all around the world, thanks colonialism, and that it was just kind of a natural, like, hey, we won this, and we keep doing that, but maybe we should get together. Now, when one of those friends of the team splits, right? Like whether it's business or just your friend circle. I mean, what happens, right? Like you got yourself a frenemy, don't you? Because like you know them pretty well, but they said something about your ex, and even though you're not with your ex, you can't just flap and say something like that, man. And that's kind of a really silly, dumbed down version of exactly what happened. The giant volume giant that is Russia said, hey, you know what? I know we're in this team, but you guys are doing it all wrong. Your system is all wrong, and I don't like it. So maybe we should all change. And of course, everybody else is like, "Oh, we're good." So maybe we shouldn't. And that, I think we should do another episode just on proxy wars. That would be so much fun. Yeah. But that's when we started to invest heavily in others, and really kind of like how, if you've ever seen a political map, you invest in a country here, you invest in a country there, establish democracy there, they establish communism there, and it spreads, and then we're civilly at each other's throats. And that's a really horrible simplified version of the Cold War is, whose political idea is correct? Well, let's just infect everybody with our political ideas and see where the dust settles.
Yeah, no, and how that bleeds out in the form of proxy wars was a great that was a great pull right there, because again, if you look back and do your own research and look at history, but the United States, aka, and NATO, or NATO, aka the United States, and then the Warsaw Pact, aka Russia, the Soviet, it wasn't, I guess it was technically the Soviet Union at that time, but Russia writ large. That's what they did. It's like they had all their minions out running around the globe and field testing weapons systems, field testing tactics, seeing if they could gain headway in a region of the world to further corrupt that portion of the world with their political ideology. I mean, look, and I'm just saying that kind of neutrally, because not everybody. Look, that's what we. So I guess, Jeremy, I'm kind of starting off not the rebuttal, but the response to Russ. And my only response is this: like, if you think what Russ just said or what I'm saying is wrong, how many countries have we quote unquote liberated? Since 2001, and we've tried to enforce or impress upon them Jeffersonian democracy. Again, by the way, I hate using this. See, I just fell victim. We're not a democracy.
Yeah.
We are a constitutional republic. So that's another separate issue there. It is a war of attrition by changing the language. Like, our democracy. Well, great. Well, we're not a democracy. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about. We are not a democracy, period. And so that's another little pet peeve. I'm tired of that. But to that point is how many countries have we tried to impress our version of governance upon who culturally just that's not their thing, baby. To use an Austin Powers comment. You know what I'm saying, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Well, like, Iraq, Afghanistan. I mean, like, oh, great. And that could let's table some of those conversations for.
Oh my God,
yeah. All right. But that would be my response to like Russ's comment right there. Is like, you got to look at the history and then you got to take a step back. And it's not just even, well, here's the history that people will talk about. And see our previous podcast when I was trying to pull up that, I used Google and I used Brave Search to try to find that German PM or chancellor who had made that statement Jeremy was referencing, and how just even the information that was being presented from two different search engines and how the search was being skewed in one direction over on Google. So to Russ's point, we're better and all this, but then proxy wars, and honestly, you're right. That almost needs to be another one, because then you can talk about Africa, Cuba. I mean, oh my God.
100%.
That would be hey, right there, timeout before Jeremy's going to give his response. But that's a good one for comments. Would you like to see an episode where it's focused on the proxy wars? And these were the wars of the 70s and the 80s. I mean, this was, well, actually, maybe mid 60s. You could maybe go that far back. But
one can almost argue Korea was a proxy war.
Well, yeah, but that was still China. Yeah. But I don't know if I would put that quite the same category. But but we could sit and debate that.
You know what we could do is we could say proxy wars, and is the Cold War even over? Because I mean, honestly. Like it's it's still like you said, Jeremy, with North Korea, China, is it still over? Like some of the players have changed about anyway.
Well, no, but that's a great point. And so just to add,
same shit, different toilet.
Did you just say same shit, different toilet?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought that's what you said, and I was like, that's pretty good. That made me laugh. That's the same shit, different toilet. Same shit, different toilet. All right, Jeremy. Before you come and make your response, I just want to add to where you guys just took this, because you could make the same arguments about the Middle East, conflicts. You could look at the 7-Day War, Yom Kippur. Okay, let's bring it over to Jeremy. All right, Jeremy.
Yeah. So just to kind of bounce off of that whole thing, Russ kind of got into some of the historical reference there, and there's a fantastic historical piece where if you really want to figure out like who really wears the shorts when it comes to NATO, let's look at the introduction. And this might be, something over some people's heads, but I will go into an explanation over this. But let's look at the introduction of the 7.62 by 51 NATO round and how that single-handedly screwed over Europe. And I'll explain why.
Ian, are you going into your own direction for your portion, or is this the response to Russ?
No, this is historically applicable, and Russ is smiling because he knows where I'm going with this.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure.
So the reason this is significant is because anybody who doesn't think the United States doesn't wear their shorts and basically likes to have this level of usury and manipulation over NATO. Let me explain the 7.62 by 51. If you don't know what that is, it is a cartridge that was basically designed because the United States at the time was trying to look for, along with Europe, they're trying to look for a standardized cartridge that could be used in rifles. So NATO basically kind of they had these debates and these quarrels and stuff like that of how to standardize, because they were like, look, if we're going to be in this boys and girls club together, right? Like, we got to figure this stuff out. And what better way to do that than to assimilate gear? Well, so Europe had a really, really good idea. And basically, and Russ will probably know this via history, Europe came out with the FNFAL. And why is this significant? Because the FNFAL was not originally chambered in 7.62 by 51. It was chambered in a totally different cartridge entirely. Now, I could rabbit hole this, but I'm not going to for the sake of time. But the United States literally told Europe and NATO, if we're going to use this firearm, we are going to require you to chamber the FAL in 7.62 by 51. And they kind of went back and forth with NATO about this. And ultimately, NATO was like, okay, yeah, we'll make the, as it's known as, the right arm of the free world, 7.62 by 51. And shortly after that, the United States did the dumbest thing in the world when we should have adopted that rifle and came out with the horrendous pile of shit that is the M14. So in my opinion, historically, it's been a mess ever since its inception, and the United States has just ridden this wave and made Europe do whatever it wanted to do. And
yeah, I just want to go on the record right now before we start getting too much hate mail. I did not make a comment bad mouthing the M14. That was all Jeremy. I just want to put that right. So. Look, so don't people start hating and lumping me in with his comments. No, right? He also likes AKs, so you know.
Yeah, and to be fair though, right? Like, the M14 is a platform. Like, if you don't put overwhelming expectations on it, especially in its full auto version, which literally is a dumpster fire. I don't know one person that's used the full auto M14 and was like, yeah, this is a good idea. Yeah. It's not. The M14 is a good rifle, but when you literally told NATO, yeah, if you standardize this in the weapon we're all going to adopt, and then you're just like, yeah, no, this isn't going to happen. And then everybody's just like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, historically, we're already in a situation where the United States basically lied and developed its own thing and was like, you know, we're going to tell you what to do, but we're not going to be involved in this relationship to the extent that we're going to adopt European stuff. So,
right. Yeah. Well, and then, you know, and just because you brought up weapons as an example for this, let me just throw one more in there just to add to your point. Because in case somebody's watching this right now is saying, well, I don't understand what Jeremy's talking about. Yep. So again, go back to part one. You'll hear, you know, I tell a couple stories of me being in the active duty military back during that period of time, stationed in Germany, blah, 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 blah. So when I was on active duty in Germany, we still had the 45. That was our sidearm. But so I think maybe not necessarily focus on the M14, but to Jeremy's point is, all of these interactions and these conversations, and then we transition into the 9mm. So kind of the same thing, but on the opposite direction. Maybe we felt bad of fucking everybody over when it came to the 7.62 by 51, but the 45 is a much superior, has way better kinetic energy and stopping power than a 9mm does. Now, back in the 80s, we didn't know what we know now about body armor, ballistics, you know, or ballistic materials, things of that nature. Well, now there's even more of a point for why you should be shooting 40 or 45 or 10 mil as opposed to 9 mil, right? So, but Jeremy, don't take us too far down on that. But but it's the same thing. We then changed our primary sidearm to meet NATO because kind of all the way bringing it all the way back down to us is to find these. Okay, we're all going to play together nicely in this little sandbox. We're all on the same team, and these are the results of some of that, right? Nations will adopt technologies or weapons platforms that if left to their own designs, they may not have otherwise done because at the end of the day, they're like, well, that's stupid. Why would we do that? Right. Is that kind of the point you're making there, Jeremy? Did I do a good job of trying
and you're not wrong. And the reason I made the point that I did too is because it kind of just outlines or at least highlights. Like, look, like this already had a less than optimal start from the beginning when, and granted, as time went on, like that's when the development of the M14 and stuff happened. But like it was one of those, I think, points to where I really do feel like some countries were jaded over that. And so you already started to have these mild disagreements occurring. And I think it only evolved, even beyond just weapons platforms. But yeah, so that's just my little tidbit for replying to Russ about the historical thing, because not many people know that. Like, I don't feel like a lot of people outside of especially the firearms community or like gunsmithing community really know that. So it's a good little historical tidbit.
And if I may,
Yeah.
an FAL fan. Hi, I'm Russ. I'm an FAL fan. Also, I like the case. We by mandating the 7.62, we really did frankly kind of ruin it, because it was a much better cartridge, the original one. But we should talk about it on the side. What I want to say is, if you want to know more about that specifically, Forgotten Weapons has Forgotten Weapons has a bunch of awesome videos
100%.
on the variants of the FAL.
Yes,
it goes all into the history and how one guy in the Army's War Department screwed everybody over by picking the M14. Anyway, so go watch that.
Okay, hey,
and then let's talk about it.
Yeah, well, okay, but bringing this full circle, because again, not very little of this is scripted, but unbeknownst to me, that we would go down, geek alley talking about cartridges here. But this goes into the point that I think Jeremy's going to raise later, and well, maybe he will, maybe he won't. But Jeremy and I have talked about this over the last couple of days, and that had to do with the ACU, that Army camouflage uniform, that horrible abomination.
God.
But that goes to your point, Russ. It's like how you get this group think and you get this mentality, right? So what we're really trying to say here in the intro is like, we may not do that, or the Germans, or some other country, some other signatory, the Norwegians, whomever it is, they might be like, hey, I've got this better, I'm thinking of the original Dune movie, where they come up with, the weirding way, and we've come up with a way of fighting via sound, right? Yeah. Well, but if they were part of NATO, they might say, yeah, none of us want to do it because we can't make those same tones or something, well, okay, so we could come up with the best, armored personnel carrier or tank or artillery system or personal, light infantry type of system, or infantry system. But somebody else, whether it's the United States or the other members of that organization, might poo-poo it. So that really goes back into the whole issue with entanglements. Why do you want to be part of something that's going to just like thwart or stall or otherwise, negatively impact your own creativity or your own style of warfighting?
Yeah.
There's so much.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeremy. Go ahead.
No, I was just because Jeremy's going to end up speaking next. So go ahead, Russ.
Okay. So I was just going to say, like that, you just made a statement that just so perfectly summed up what I was trying to incept into everybody's mind is if you said, if everybody's going to poo-poo it, is that not just all we have NATO for right now, is to poo-poo stuff, to go like this or like this? Like Afghanistan after 9/11, does anybody even remember that they said, that was an attack, you guys may proceed with your war? Nobody remembers that. Like did we really need their permission? If we didn't give it, would that have stopped us? Like, what's the point now? Like, it had a good idea, but what's the point now? You know what I mean? Just to keep some jobs around or something? I don't get
it. Honestly, just to respond to that, it's to keep the money tree full of money leaves,
Hey, look, Raytheon and DARPA and all of these other companies need their paychecks, fellas. All right.
Yeah,
we can't deprive them of their paychecks.
And
please don't drone strike my house.
We're collaborating across the world. It makes us look good,
I hear the IR pred above my house right now, so if I go offline, I'm sorry.
All right, Jeremy, let's bring it back over to you. All right, because I think Russ got us going here. Everybody's feeling properly motivated. All right, Jeremy. So we're going to turn it over to Jeremy. Jeremy's got the floor for the next 5 to 10 minutes, and then Russ and I will respond to him. So all right, Jeremy, bring you full screen, sir. Take it away.
So there's a couple points that I want to kind of bounce off of, and it's going to be about 3 or 4. So I'm going to take this incrementally. But just to kind of hit off of the entanglements and especially when it comes to like the gear and stuff like that, like Russ also brought up a really good point about this, and when it comes to having entangling alliances like NATO, like very much is your stockpiles and stuff are very much at the behest of what NATO wants to do, right? So like if NATO's like we're all going to basically like we're all basically going to chip into the Ukrainian war machine. So every member has a duty as directed by NATO.
Well, not just a duty, but an obligation.
Right. Well, and I use duty in the quotational context, but it's this idea of like, oh, like, and if you don't, then you're a terrible person and you must sympathize with the opposition. And it's like, look, like in the end of the day, like how many of these countries, like the major countries in NATO, like how many of them have operational stockpiles anymore? Like how many, like, and when I say operational stockpiles, like if war came to their door tomorrow, would they be able to effectively repel an enemy attack of a fairly decent scale, right? So here's the thing. If your stockpiles and your sovereignty is at the behest of an organization that demands certain things from you, and you need to ask permission to do certain things, and whether you're invested in the conflict or not, they're like, hey, look, this is what you're obliged, and I'm going to use quotations again, like you have a duty to defend the block, right? Like at what point do you not step back and question, like, like I really like the FAL, but do I really like it that much? Like to a certain degree, is it worth being a part of something for some of the minor perks that you may get in exchange for your sovereignty and your country's ability to defend itself? Because from what I've been able to decipher, if you will, is it's not like, and it never has been. It's an entangling alliance that overwhelmingly drains resources. Now, to take this, and I'm going to hit on the point of escalation, and the onset of when everything really started to pop off in Ukraine. A point that I want to make in terms of escalation is we watched Russia use thermobaric bombs. Okay, for those of you who've never seen a thermobaric bomb go off, I highly recommend that you watch a video of how a thermobaric weapon is not only like deployed from an aircraft or whatever, but the end result, because I'm telling you right now, it's one of the closest things you can get to nuclear without nuclear if the size is appropriate. And
well, hey, before you go any further, I just want to throw in a quick caveat, but it is not nuclear in design. So Jeremy is not, for the record, saying that thermobarics have the same yield but he's basically saying that short of a nuclear weapon, like one of the best pieces of ordnance we have are thermobaric ordnance because of the destructive capability of that style of munition. Okay, just had to throw that out there just so somebody didn't freak out.
No, and that's good. But we saw Russia use, I think it was like 2 thermobarics, if I remember correctly, because I remember watching the videos of them, and I'm just like, I sat there, I was like, dude, never in my life would I have ever expected to see something like this. Like it literally made the bomb that we dropped on what the heck was it? The bunker buster that we dropped, or the Moab. It literally made our Moab look insignificant. And it's like, holy shit, dude. Like, and so when we talk about escalation, it's like they literally are willing to use a thermobaric bomb. And this thing has disastrous proportions outside of a conventional nuclear warhead. So the fact that they've already deployed it is really, like I said before, is NATO really willing to come to the table and wage that type of war? Because from a historical standpoint, I don't think the populations of many of these places really understand historically what a meat grinder it would be. And moreover, if you wanted an excuse to impose the draft again, if the country needs you as a body and NATO needs you as a body, guess where you're going? And you know, so on one of my final points here, or on my two last final points, when we evaluate escalation, does NATO also have, or the countries also in NATO have, do they have adequate training outside of their stockpiles? Are they too reliant on a new form of training where we're so used to using electronic warfare, and we're so used to having a complacency in certain aspects? And I'm not saying that this is an absolute, because there's very few to no absolutes in life, but have we become, as countries involved in this organization, too reliant or too arrogant to believe that we're that good that we have no form of recourse? And a discussion that I had with Mark actually is, they don't even teach you basic survival in the military anymore. Probably not even unless you're in a special warfare area. But Mark, correct me if I'm wrong on this. When you have a minute here, do they still even teach it to the soft units? Do they still know how to do ranger beads? Do they know how to set up a low profile camp? Do they know how to source water and source meat in a low profile way, or find their own food? Do they know how to do they have field craft, is what I'm saying. And on a final note, why the hell are we opening a NATO office in Taiwan? And that's all I have. So last time I checked, it's not the North Pacific Treaty Organization, guys.
Yeah.
Well, let me just chime in, because you threw a question towards me,
Yeah.
and then I'm just going to answer that question initially, and I'll let Russ have his response. But so look, I'm neither an 18 series. I'm not, special forces. I'm not a ranger. So I can't speak specifically to what's going on now in those units. The one thing I will comment on is, and again, this information, everything about, say, these experiences, are, just barely a decade old. But my experiences working with, even like the best of the best military units that we have, all the way down to what, some people would just call, a vanilla type of infantry unit, or a mechanized infantry unit, right? Which doesn't get the same type of, like, a cool guy, points as, like, again, maybe being in, SEALs or Delta or Rangers, and even, within all those things, like even the Marine Corps, like some people put the Marines just as Marines up on a level, and like, well, they're infantrymen, but within the Marine Corps, and no offense to anybody in the Marine Corps, I get it. You guys are very proud of your background and everything.
As they should be.
Yeah, exactly. And you should, but within even then, you've got, regimental, reconnaissance, you've got, MARSOC, you've got all these different flavors. So I obviously can't speak to how all those work, or what they are doing now versus what they were doing, 10 years ago, or in all honesty, what was it for me? I think 7 years ago was the last time I wore a uniform. I had to go back into the military because of my agency time, my military time. There were some points or years that weren't getting transferred over because of the secrecy issues that still hadn't been, blah, 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 blah. Long story short, I had to go back in so I could get my 20. And so I was in the National Guard. And, and again, I don't want to pick on that unit either, because I think the very best military unit I ever served in was an Army Reserve Light Infantry unit. And that was my very first in the reserves / National Guard. Two different things, but that was the unit I was in when I first left active duty. And I'm here to tell you that, because at that time, everybody in the unit had just come off of active duty. I mean, and from a wide variety of backgrounds, and the attitude back then, like, that was some of the only times I ever, no joke, like, so we're light infantry, so we practice ambushes and raids and things of this nature. And you literally left, in an assembly area, went through the wire, just like something you might see out of like a Vietnam movie, and you locked and loaded, and you did the whole, 10-kilometer or 20-kilometer patrol to your ambush site with loaded weapons, real grenades on your person, real claymores. This is, I don't think anyone even does that. Maybe again, to Jeremy's point, maybe in special forces. So bringing this back full circle, having worked with so many of those units as a ground branch operator in the CIA, I just simply would say I was amazed by how many people didn't know map and compass skills,
Yeah.
didn't know basic, land navigation, because it either had to be the FBCB, their computerized system, or a GPS. Again, the litany that goes, it goes on and on and on. And to Jeremy's point, you take away that sliver of technology, and you got a military element or a group of military units that are supposedly working with each other and in some type of agreement, who will be defeated by somebody who just knows how to navigate by the moon and the stars, and will come up and who knows how to do proper camouflage and field craft, as Jeremy just said. And that's why I think the bushcraft community on a different side is kind of cool, because
100%.
you don't have to be in the military to actually understand field craft, but you'll be defeated by an enemy who understands field craft, who understands camouflage, who understands how to read terrain, how to use terrain to their advantage, who knows where there's good areas to lay up, or to hide sites or waters, and can survive out there. And they'll just sneak up behind you with a stick with a nail in it, and that soldier wearing $20,000 worth of technology who can barely move
gets deleted.
Yeah, and I guess maybe, Jeremy, that's what I'll leave you with this, because I think you may be digging for that. Yeah, we actually had to cancel an op because we had an active duty, an Army active duty unit supporting us. They couldn't make the support by fire position before we went into the objective, because the terrain was too severe. Everybody was wearing body armor. So again, back to my light infantry days, we knew exactly what every.
Uh-oh. Stop talking, Mark. We lost you for a second. So
that's
a very appealing picture, by the way. He's knife handing.
Yeah. Great. Better than just like.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Just to.
I don't know. I don't know if you guys could hear me. But I don't know if you guys were talking and that's going to be recorded, but you guys, the whole system froze for a minute. And before I go and finish my comment, I was almost done. I just want to point out, isn't it odd? This is twice now. And then I watched Jack's late night lives from Black Scout Survival. He just had the same thing happen to him in the middle of a quote unquote controversial podcast.
Like a little system interruption.
Oh boy. Oh no, we didn't do anything. Yeah.
Everybody smile and wave to our local NSA guy.
Yeah. And I'm looking down at my connection. Dude, I'm max connection right now. So
but I have a great connection.
So putting that aside, we'll save that for a conversation about, well, we already just kind of talked. You all know what we're kind of alluding to there, but to that point, all I was trying to say to Jeremy's point, and this isn't bad mouthing anybody. This is just, look, I can't do 100 push-ups right now. I just can't. I'm physically broken, So then why do you think I should be in a special forces type of unit? Or why would you be relying on me? I'm not the guy who's going to sneak 30 miles behind enemy lines. And that's just not who I am anymore. I can help train you so you can do that. And I can, but I can't do that anymore. So if I'm relying on somebody who can't perform the task at hand, that's a serious issue. And I think that's Jeremy's ultimate point. Did I answer the question, Jeremy, or did I?
No, and it really does speak to the idea too, that like in the end of the day, like, look, for a long time, we have been missing critical pieces of readiness, at least in the United States. Yes. Now, I have taken time to observe, and I did talk to you about this too, but if you look at the Swiss mountain units and some of the units in Austria, dude, they have their shit together. Like, they are some of the most top tier mountain warfare units, I would argue, in the world. From some of the stuff that I've seen, they literally take in other NATO countries' units and train them. They take the Marines, they take Army special operations from our country. A lot of dudes go there to train with these guys because they have field craft, they have mountain warfare experience. Like, a lot of these guys in their downtime, they are backpackers, they're hikers. There's a lot of stuff you can learn. And I think one of the biggest detriments is that we as a country within NATO, and I'm being very objective and neutral here, is we're not keeping pace. So to the positive of many European nations in NATO, I would argue the fact that they have better field craft. And they do go more to that light infantry, as Mark had talked to. Like, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Redbeard Tactical, but he's a pretty squared away guy. He spent a lot of time in the German military, but he's like, dude, he's like, if you were to take a doctrine whether it was special operations for the general military, or you were to take light infantry, what is a superior mass doctrine that you could put out to somebody? And he's like, hands down, he's like, I learned a ton from light infantry dudes that were squared away. They had great discipline. They had really good game plans. And like Mark, like you're talking about, you learned how to set up ambushes, how to counter ambush, how to get to a certain area from here and there. He's like, light infantry is one of the best things that you can have, but you need to couple that with fieldcraft, because fieldcraft is important. So
well, just to slow you down, so we
Yeah.
can bring this over to Russ. I think the way to say it is, like, in my mind, light infantry is a synonym for fieldcraft. You can't really be a true light
100%.
infantry unit if you're not if you don't know
100%.
fieldcraft.
So
And and again, I'm not an Army Ranger. I can't speak to what the regiment's doing right now, or any of that stuff. But back in the day, that was the standard. I mean, like, the Ranger handbook was real, and you didn't have to be in a Ranger
can
unit.
still find
You
them
had a
all over the
Ranger
place.
handbook. You just like, and you were always doing hip pocket training, and bringing this back kind of over to NATO, and then letting Russ weigh in here. I think that just the real maybe takeaway from our kind of we didn't go down a weird rabbit hole. We didn't get sidetracked, but ask yourself this. We're just talking about one aspect of warfighting.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't talk about aerial combat. We didn't talk about artillery or armor. We haven't talked about that. Yep. But that is, all of this is a facet of warfighting, and NATO then is the umbrella upon which a bunch of, like, the three of us are all going to get together, and then we're going to defeat a common enemy. Well, okay. Well, so the question I think you're really asking is, well, what does that even look like? Because if we're all going to join together to defeat a common enemy, that also means there has to be commonalities between all of us, whether that's our ammunition, our doctrine, our tactics, this type of stuff. Russ.
That's a great point. I mean, it even kind of harkens back to, like, my main holdup with it is are we trying to, is this our foray into a world the name just like in Star Trek.
Order?
What's that?
Like a new world order? Is that what you mean?
Like a global federation or whatever, like
like a grand army of the Republic, to use a Star Wars term.
Yeah, like if you're not a part of our gig, then you're questionable. You might be the enemy, and like, you're not a part of our gig, so that means you're not a good guy, And with the readiness, the preparedness, and the training, there, Redbeard, it's just, if you want to standardize something so that it doesn't become something that should be blacklisted later, well, that's one thing, but now you're dictating, like, exactly what we can and can't, like, where that's a slippery slope if I've ever seen one. Where's it going to end? Is NATO going to start inspecting all of our ammo bunkers and stuff? If somebody goes to war with the hominis dominus of NATO, does that mean NATO's just going to give us the ammunition? Like, are we going to have ammunition rations now? Because, like, it's such a slippery slope.
Well, don't say that too loud, because some countries are technically rationing their ammunition stores now, Russ. You look, I'm not going to list any names of countries, but some people might get mildly triggered, and Lord knows it could be the diplomats. But but to that point, though, that brings us to, like, on two final points that I'd kind of like to have a quick discussion on. Are we ready to meet an escalation? And furthermore, do we need to, at least as the United States, I can't speak for Europe, but do we, at least as the United States, as it concerns, NATO's agenda, do we need to have, do we rely more or less, like, in the direction that we've been going in terms of having this new school form of military training? Or do we bring back that fieldcraft and teach people how to legitimately survive? Because as it seems right now, the average foot soldier, the average foot infantry person, if you were to tell them, okay, walk out 1 kilometer from the base and set up a bivy tent, set up a fire, and you have to stay out there for 1 week and sustain yourself for 1 week operationally. How many people could do that? Realistically, how many people could do that? Because that used to also be, as we were discussing, they used to be common things. There literally were survival courses. Like Mark brought up the Ranger Handbook. I would highly recommend anybody pick that up.
Yeah.
And granted, now we have to remember there are certain things that are more applicable to the average person than other things. Like the average person at this juncture is not going to dig a trench. However, if you need to figure it out, you can figure out how to dig a defensive line. But the point being,
before you kept going, I wanted to bring up, because back to your saying, and for those who don't know the Ranger Handbook, right? And I'll go pull mine. I think it's SH 71-76. I'll get that information for you in a second. But if you haven't seen it before, like there's obviously portions of that handbook that break down in a manner that while you're out in the field, it's like a not a cheat sheet, but it's like a review. It's a really good, like the crib notes. Like, okay, I'm about to do an ambush. Okay, what are my key elements? Okay, first thing, conduct recon. So there's all these little steps that you follow. But to Jeremy's point, there's a huge section of the handbook that's devoted to land navigation, how to build shelters, where to find water, edible plants, stuff like this, because light infantry, that mindset was, if you want to use today's vernacular, that was like a bushcrafter, mountaineer, bicycle endurance runner / I fight grizzly bears with my bare hands. It was something like that to bring that, it was like a book for that type of person. And that's what that person was back then. You were like, you had to know all that stuff. And there's one last little personal, not aside, but a little quick just story, and then let Russ respond to this, and then we'll kind of keep going in our direction. But so I'm in a foreign theater of operations. I'm a ground branch guy, right? So it's me, and I'm not going to say anything much more about it, but obviously we do things by, with, and through the military, because we're either prosecuting something at a national level from a national security perspective, or we're there providing, direct support, going to by, with, and through, military units. So I've worked with a wide variety of military units. Again, like I said, from a basic infantry style unit all the way up to tier 1 top tier units. I'm with this SF unit, and it doesn't matter what group it was or any of that kind of stuff. And but you could make some arguments about, the SF went into this X-18 X-ray thing program, and so here's a guy in and he's tabbed, right? I never did it, so like what can I say? But this guy was watching me, and he's new to the military, and he's previously. You weren't in special forces until, you couldn't even apply until I think it was E5. You had to be in an infantry unit, reach the rank, then you applied, went to selection, They changed the program. Then it was 18 X-rays. They were taking people right out of basic training, but, so we're no real world experience. So this guy, again, I'm not putting myself on a pedestal. I'm being evaluated by a guy who doesn't really know a whole lot. He went through selection in Q course, so he knows more about that than I do. But when it comes to actually having the hands-on experience doing these things, so he's watching me working on one of our radio systems that is very similar to something that they had in their element, and he thought I was the commo guy. And he's like, "Oh, dude, you're really good at that." I'm like, "No, dude, I'm you, but for my organization, I know all of this stuff. How do you not like? How is that even impressive to you?" So again, this isn't about anything high speed and crazy. It's like I just put this. It's a piece of SATCOM, whatever, but that was like, oh, I can't believe you know how to do it, because he didn't know it. And I'm like, no, dude, you're supposed to know how all this shit too. Like, this isn't anything impressive. So I'm bringing that all the way back full circle, and then let Russ respond. But 100%. To Jeremy's point, how are we going to work within an organization, NATO, working with other militaries who don't put the same emphasis on the same areas of importance, whether, and again, one country might say, hey, dude, it's all about mechanized warfare. So, who gives a shit about your field craft, your light infantry skills? Whereas another element like the Swiss might be like, oh no, it's all about that. So you see what I'm kind of saying? Russ, do you want to kind of bring that back together, and then we'll move on?
Yeah, no, it's a perfectly valid point. And you could say, well, the obvious answer is to just cross train everybody. But who's going to foot the bill
Yeah.
for sending 20 people to Sweden to learn mountaineering, to to Florida to learn jungle warfare or whatever? Like who's
Right.
going to foot the bill for that? You know what I mean? Like there was no evolution of checks and balances for NATO to
Right.
figure this kind of stuff out. And honestly, I'm like, I've never been in NATO, but honestly, from what I can tell, it's just pretty willy nilly.
Yeah.
I mean, like if
Right.
you look, like the couple of actions I can think of were that they responded to were recently were a couple of civil wars, so they didn't have to rely on anything like that. But that just shows how neutered they are,
Yeah.
like. So again, what's the point?
And to kind of go off of that just one moment here, Russ, I think Ukraine is a great example again of like you have two forces that kind of had to like they've kind of had to by way start integrating some level of fieldcraft, because if you look at like how some of these lines are, right, like during the spring thaw, dude, they had like a foot of water in their trenches, and so they're like, okay, well, how do you stay dry? Okay, so this is the solution to doing this, or how do you stay warm without actually telling the enemy, hey, we have a fire over here, whatever the case is. Like how
Well, I have to interrupt you because and I'm sorry, because so here,
Yeah.
I think this might be the first time. Mark this down the calendar. Episode 5, the first point of difference. And
Yeah.
like I don't agree with what you just said, and
Mhm.
maybe I only disagree with it in the sense of, see, you're referencing these things that we're seeing from, if you watch any of the videos of what's going
Mhm.
on in Ukraine, right? Jeremy, I don't know if you and I have ever really talked about this. I am beside myself. I don't
Yeah.
even know how to describe it. Am I appalled? Am I aghast? Am I just like
Mhm.
bewildered? I'm looking at a style of warfare being conducted in Ukraine from the video. So again, I'm not
Yep.
there, so take it with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that they're wrong because I'm not there. So what the hell
Yep.
do I know? But from what I'm seeing in videos, I'm like, hold it, what the hell are you guys doing? Like,
Yeah.
At the onset of the war, I thought it was all kind of fake. Like, there's no way, dude.
Yeah.
This is 2020. Well, now it's 2023, but I'm saying 2022. We're talking, advanced advanced capabilities. We've been studying war and perfecting war, especially America. Unfortunately for the rest of the world, we have had a lot of experience in war fighting recently, and but I'm not seeing that reflected in the videos I'm seeing. I'm seeing like World War I bullshit style tactics. I'm seeing mechanized units without infantry without mechanized units, or either or both without close air support. And I'm like, what the hell? And then so Jeremy, this is where my argument, like trench warfare. I'm like, hold it, what trench warfare? What are we fucking talking about? Jeremy's talking about like we're in static positions. Trenches are dug. If you haven't seen any of the videos, I mean, I'm not going to tell you to go watch them. I watch them and I'm just like, I'm again, like I said, I'm like, what the hell am I watching?
Gives you a headache at times.
Yeah, it does. So I think that's it. So matter of fact, let me use that as my segue into where I kind of want to turn this, let both you guys respond to my comments. So Jeremy, I apologize. I cut you off.
No,
but
you're
because
good.
you started talking about like guys don't even know how to dig trenches. I'm amazed by the fact that we're looking at a form of modern warfare in which trenches are being dug and infantry isn't supporting armor and armor's not supporting infantry and no one's got close air support. I'm just like, man, I got 30 plus years in both the military and the agency. And I'm like, we haven't acted like that since 1918. I'm like, what the hell's going on? So then what would NATO, if we're going to be a part of a signatory of NATO and possibly go, even if it's for a just campaign, is to the point we're bringing here. And I think this is a great way to bring it back into that. Is this really what we're doing? I mean, are we going to subject ourselves to someone else's version of warfare, whether that's weapon systems or tactics? I'm kind of flabbergasted here. So you guys want to respond to that, and then I'm going to I'm going to give my last comment. We're almost at an hour. I think we're again training to standards, not to time. And then I think that's a good setup, and then for our outro after that. So what do you guys think about that, or did I just seriously ramble and sidebar us there?
Well, I'd like to kind of turn this on its head, actually. So we were talking about training earlier. You know, I can't speak specifically for anybody's experiences outside of my own. I am aware that up until recently, the you know, like Rangers and the Marine Corps' um, um, gosh, all I can think of is tier one, but the not tier one,
You're not
they
talking
do
MARSOC, are you?
no, not
No.
MARSOC. I'm talking
Okay.
about like the you know, scouts and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
They
The
do
long range
some,
reconnaissance, yeah, that kind
yeah,
of stuff. Yeah.
Like
they do
like the MEU or the expeditionary units.
well, I mean, like even some of the expeditionary units, yeah, there is a level of training. I mean, I can't speak personally. Like, I've never seen anybody learn snares or something like that. But you know, in our combat school, and for the infantry, the School of Infantry, you know, we do learn fighting holes. We do dig fighting holes and all that's old school. And what's really funny about it, what I want to say that I think is very interesting, is when we were gearing up for Iraq, and excuse me for my camera twitching, my I'm not a professional, so my gear just died on. I don't know what's going on with it. So in our gear up for going to Iraq, we went to 29 Palms, California, 29 Palms, which is in California, and one of the big training scenarios there is with trench warfare. They have this huge range that is just basically a big trench setup, and we learn combined forces maneuvers and integrating that trench on our pathway into the objective. So and when we were doing that, we were like, man, this is silly. Like, this is just the Marine Corps being so old, we don't have anything up to date, you know. Like, we did some mount training and stuff like that, but now seeing all this stuff in Ukraine where they are in trenches, I'm like, okay, I guess we weren't that far off from modern, because we trained in trenches and there they are in trenches.
Well, but so I don't think you've just stood on its head. I think you're actually helping prove my point, which is, so, you know, again, that was all in preparation Gulf One, and we knew that, you know, and when it came to the style of warfare that we were going to encounter from the Iraqis, that we were likely to encounter entrenched positions, whether I was entrenched armor, which, you know, instead of being out maneuvering, was now entrenched and acting as, like, you know, a pillbox, so to speak, or entrenched infantry units holding a line in the sand, you know, you know, again, go all the way back to World War I or World War II, you know, whether you're looking at Tobruk, you know, Alamein, you know, all of those things. So that's still reality. And hopefully we'll get Russ back here in a second. Obviously having a little technical issue, but we've moved past that, where it's not just World War I, World War II style tactics, where it's a cavalry unit, which in those ancient times, you know, really consisted of men on horses, or an infantry unit, like, you know, with the whistle blowing and then going up over the top and then going across no man's land. We're talking combined arms warfare. And that's what Gulf One pretty much showed everybody. And we, you know, that was our first opportunity to take all the lessons that our major military units had learned and honed out at NTC, the National Training Center, Fort Irwin, California. And then we went over to the desert, and, you know, the Iraqis aren't the Russians, but they had almost all, you know, exclusively Russian armaments, and we kicked the living shit out of them. So that's my only comment to that is, I'm not saying that trenches or foxholes or pillbox, I'm not saying that those things are irrelevant. Again, light infantry, I can't even tell you how many freaking foxholes I've done, both above ground and below ground, you know, like, and if you know what I'm talking about, if you're a veteran, you know what I'm saying. Like, everybody thinks of a fighting position or a foxhole, and you're digging down, but then you're building, you know, you're using the dirt and you're making revetments, certain types of revetments and overhead cover. Well, in the light infantry, we didn't do that, because that's actually a signature, a terrain identifier that could let somebody know that there's a series of fighting positions over here, because you can see those little hills and things. We dug down. So it was all flush. And the only thing that ever popped up was just like the little bit of your head and your rifle as you were shooting down, and you would duck down and your overhead cover was flush with the terrain. So it was supernatural. So again, that all of that style of warfare still pertains. And, you know, when it comes to NATO though, and bringing it back into this point, it's not that trench warfare doesn't exist, but America, we have mastered. I mean, we'll see in the next conflict if we've retained it, but we've mastered combined arms warfare. I mean,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, don't think I'm a Nazi or anything, people, but if you look at Germany in at the beginning of World War II, I mean, Germany honestly should never have gone to war. I mean, everybody like overrates the German military and this, that, and the other thing. They were mechanized units, their leadership, some of these things are really true. But at the end of the day, what it really boiled down to is Germany figured out a new way of doing warfare that no one thought was possible. Hey, hell, on our side, I don't know if it was Doolittle or if it may have been Doolittle, or I don't think it was Arnold. But there was a point in time that no one thought an airplane could destroy an aircraft carrier or a battleship. And you see what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to say. So bringing this back into the NATO thing, entanglements, alliances. To Jeremy's points about what are people training on? What are they thinking about? Well, hey, it could be very stifling. I personally think, to end that, and then I'll kind of let you guys respond, and then I'll kind of go into my argument about NATO, is exactly the point. I think Jeremy and Russ are 100% correct. If you're changing weapons platforms or tactics and procedures in order to better accommodate the other, 3 or 4 people in your alliance, well, you may not have ever discovered the weirding way, and you're using sound to destroy your enemies, like in again, see that bad example. But had there not been that betrayal, I mean, the House of Trade is, again, I'm showing my geek side. They clearly had discovered a new technology that was a game changer and a new way of fighting, a new way of warfare. Well, that's all I'm trying to say. America on its own, we were moving in that direction. NATO is kind of reining us back in, as Jeremy talked about with weapons platforms. Russ has talked about with training and thought process and history. Yeah. So. Yeah.
And to your point there, Mark, it kind of does really come and factor into like the realm of escalation. Like, again, I'll pose the question: are we realistically, or is NATO in general realistically prepared for a level of escalation that, quite frankly, our countries haven't felt, and I would say decades, to where you're facing a different type of, it's not even a different type of warfare, but it's new to people who have never faced like an overtly conventional force before. And so to those people, it is kind of new, but it's such an old style of fighting. Like Mark, you brought up like trenches, and not only just trenches, but like you brought up the videos, right? Like there, and to be fair, there's been, like, I'm not going to give their field craft a lot of credit, but it's kind of there. And then there's abysmal portions, like I would say overtly abysmal portions on both the Russians and the Ukrainian side. But if you look at these trench lines, they span kilometers. Like these like this is, like you brought up, Mark, we haven't seen stuff like this. And to your point also, Russ, like when was the last time that we've realistically seen extensive trench networks with defenses like this that we've been involved in? I mean, outside of maybe could you even count some portions of Vietnam? I would argue more. I would argue probably not since Korea, right?
Korea.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So
it's Korea. Other countries have, because I can think of like, some of the middle, like the Israeli Arab conflicts, where, and along the Egyptians breaking the line on the Suez, so, and then maybe the French and the Vietnamese at Dien Bien Phu. I mean, so I think there's some places like that, but for us, America, Korea. But again, but Jeremy, to your point, that wasn't extensive trench warfare. I mean, that was like, around a series of objectives or hilltops.
100%.
I personally think it still goes for us. I think it goes all the way back to World War II. And even then, that war had really shown the capability of mobile warfare and combined arms warfare. Yeah. So we didn't even really do a lot of that type of warfare, even in World War II.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so it's like, there's a lot of nuance to that realm. And again, going back to escalation, like is literally this what we're prepared to escalate into, getting involved in something that it is extensive kilometers of trenches, thermobaric bombs, and literally throwing people at the problem until it stops. Well, if you really want to see how well throwing people at the problem is when it stops, then we need no look further than a place like Artyomsk or Bakhmut, as it's known in Ukrainian, right? Like, dude, the death toll there. Everybody on every side is like, dude, this is a freaking meat grinder. Let's keep sending people until one side prevails. Like that's what you get in that type of warfare. And people are just like, oh, but we'll get them someday soon. No, this is what you call to a mild form. And I don't want to I don't want to say entirely that it's a stalemate, but this is how you get a stalemate to where all you do is just kill people. Like that's all those places are designed to do is just eat away at people. So I yield the floor, but
Russ, why don't you give a response to that? And then because Jeremy's points and maybe your response, that's actually going to tie and segue in nicely with my little 2 cents, and which will take, help take us out.
Well,
so,
while he's doing that, I'm gonna pop off Steve for a second.
Sure.
Yeah. So, well, I guess I really don't have a really concise addition to that. It all just kind of goes back to, what it is NATO neutered? NATO's not doing anything. So, again, where's the point? No one's ready for it. Again, where's the point? And if all we're going to do is throw money at it, did we need NATO for that? But also, why are we throwing money at it? I mean, I can go around in circles all day. So,
okay, so here I'll just throw one at you while Jeremy's taking a bathroom break. Why are we throwing money into NATO when European countries, kind of Germany selfishly wants to lead this push because they're the big boy in the block? But why are we talking about NATO and spending all these resources in NATO when the EU wants to stand up and form an EU army?
Yeah. Well,
are we going to fund them to create their own military? Is that what we're doing now too? I mean, like, you see what I'm saying? It's like, hang on a second, we already have NATO, and now Germany's trying to push to create this other entity. Well, what are we doing here, and why?
Point, are those entities going to butt heads and go to war? Yeah, exactly right. I mean, and the big conglomeration of countries to form a cohesive war unit as a concept isn't that new. It's called allies. So,
yeah,
and
allies can change.
Yeah, and allies can change. Yeah. So
it's
a good attempt at a utopian Star Trek, but utopian Star Trek world. But I feel like the sun has set on that one.
Okay, so Jeremy's back, and with the utopian Star Trek comment, which still make me laugh. But
great point to come back to.
I do. I love that. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna give my 2 cents on and I think what we'll use is, if you guys are okay with this, I'll probably talk for 5 to 7 minutes, give you guys your chance for rebuttal, and I think that'll wrap up part 2. I definitely see that this could be a recurring series, like 1 out of 8 videos we talk about NATO. And why we should be in NATO, and where I'm going to try to go with this, and like Jeremy's last points, I think segue nicely and support. And by support, boys and girls, I'm not talking about not support my argument. I'm saying support the question. You should be hitting pause throughout these videos, rewinding, hearing again what Russ had to say or Jeremy had to say, or just hitting pause and reflecting upon it. Maybe then typing in something like, okay, what the hell? Dien Bien Phu, what is that? And then and do your own, use this as a platform to do your own, self-reflection and come up with your own reach your own conclusions. So, Jeremy, as you were kind of wrapping it up there, we're talking about, escalation. We're talking about these issues. So where I'm going to go from my perspective, again, I'll start it right now, is exactly that. If you see the first video, we talk about entanglements, and and Russ just even said, we have these things, they're called allies or alliances. Back to video 1, our founding fathers were adamantly opposed to alliances or entanglements, and they would see these And I think, you know, again, I'll just tell you my bias right now. I think NATO is an entanglement.
Yeah.
Again, see the previous video. We're the ones spending all the money. We are the ones who, and to Jeremy's first point, you know, on one moment we're telling you to do this, and then once you do it, we're doing our own thing. So we're our own worst enemies at that point, because, well, I think ultimately, you know, NATO is a Ponzi scheme. You know, it's something for, you know, our senior class, our generals and politicians to use to get rich. You know, you know, and again, I'm going to bring that back over to Ukraine. Matter of fact, here, I'll just bring it right to Ukraine right now. So first and foremost, one of my arguments is one of the reasons why we shouldn't be around NATO and shouldn't be involved in it, because how does that benefit me, you, Russ, Jeremy, your neighbor? How is that really benefiting all of us? I'm taking a very American, you know, very ethnocentric perspective here. Sorry, Germany. Sorry, Europe. Sorry, France. You know, matter of fact, to the people of France, I'm sorry. When I was, you know, this is like 1986, and I'm going through like an advanced anti-armor weapons course, and you know, and so for the technology of the day, we're doing studying all these mechanized armor platforms, because we're trying to, because you had to know all these different. There were so many, and there still is so many different armored platforms, and it's hard to tell if they're on your side or the enemy. You know, so you really had to study this, and then you had to know their weak spots and where to destroy them. But whenever the French vehicles came up, the whole class would resoundingly say shoot, because so you started in layers, right? The first thing was just being able to do friend or foe, and then later on, as you got better, you would actually say the exact nomenclature, the vehicle and all this stuff. But and I just thought it was so funny, because, you know, they're the instructors and they're like, no, they're on our side. But then after one or two, you could see them kind of looking like, no, maybe it'd be okay to shoot those, because we don't know if they're, and that's part of the entanglements, right? That's part of, you know, you might just have that. Like, so French, you know, I'm kind of picking on you guys, because I actually really respect the French, and I had an opportunity to do some stuff with the French equivalent of what I did, and I was very impressed and by their.
They also helped us get our independence too.
Well, and then there's that too, right? You know, hats off.
I mean,
yeah. If you want to be honest, yeah, that may have come out a little bit differently. You know, for those guys.
Look, I'm just trying to smooth this out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, no, but but to the point here, I think that just illustrates the issues you might have, where because even within alliances, there's always going to be one or two people within your friend circles or your alliances that, you know, that's a little bit weaker than the other chains, you know, the other links in the chain. And those people, unfortunately, even when they mean very well, will be somehow subjected to, or they'll be the target of something negative, or like, for example, let's just say it's the three of us, we're the alliance. And let's just say, of the three of us, you know, Redbeard, let's say you're the one who can't assemble and disassemble the AK appropriately. Right. And then Russ and I will use some future failure, and we'll attribute it to you for not being able to disassemble as quickly or efficiently as we can, even though that had nothing to do with the problem. You see what I'm saying? That's another thing that we get from entanglements. And we're already starting to see this in terms, you know, in as it relates to NATO, in terms of Nord Stream and Ukraine. Right. So I want to leave you. That's one point I want to make. The second point is entanglements, alliances. If recent events, right? So there's a reported, still don't have all the facts, but there is a reported assassination attempt on Putin, right, in Russia. Did we do it? Did we sanction it? Did the Ukrainians do it by themselves? Did the Russians do it as a false flag, or was it or is there a fight, a dissension within the ranks of the Russian leadership, and that was a coup attempt? We don't know that yet, right? So but I'm just going to throw it out. In any one of those scenarios, except for the internal dissension, you know, within the Russian leadership, how in the hell does that benefit America to be anywhere involved in any of that? Because, and so Jeremy and I talked about this the other day. I don't like making predictions. I have a way of looking at the future based on current events, but I'll go out and make a prediction, because this is one of those scenarios where I really hope I'm wrong. I hope 6 months from now, a year from now, you guys are leaving comments and saying, hey, Mark, remember when you said this? You were way effing wrong. I hope you are right. Unfortunately, I think I might be closer to being the one who's right. And you look at our previous video and see who the Russian people are. Do your history of what led to where we are in Ukraine and why Ukraine took place in this region of, not just this conflict, but this area of the world. And because there's been conflict going on here since at least 2014, as far as it pertains to this conversation, NATO, the struggle in Ukraine. You take a look at all of that, and how can Russia have no choice but to respond? Like here's maybe the best way to say it. If I was in their shoes, I know what I would do. And I would right now be hatching a plan. I would be coordinating a very, like, no more kid glove. The gloves are off. I'm not fucking around anymore. Right now, I would be escalating it up. I would be ratcheting it up big time. I would be forcing you to either meet me, and meeting me means World War III, which means nuclear, Armageddon, or you're going to stand down and I'm going to like finish this. So and I think that's maybe one of the reasons Jeremy was talking about. We're in a style, a form of warfare that no one remembers anymore, and thermobaric weapons. I'm here to tell you that I would be looking. I might even be considering tactical nuclear weapons right now.
Yeah, it's not off the table.
Yeah, well, here I'll just about end it, and then you guys give your rebuttals. Because so if somebody really did just try to kill the president of my country, and I'm a Russian for the sake of this example, and again, for anyone who's saying I'm being an apologist, or I'm not taking their side, but I'm just being smart enough to put myself in their shoes to try to see it through their eyes. We have to, exactly. Thank you. So if I was in their shoes, knowing their history and what they've experienced, this is the event that escalated. Not me using a thermobaric munitions or me using a battlefield with tactical nuke. That's not what escalated it. It was you by trying to kill my leader, right? NATO or the US, or if it was Ukraine. If Ukraine did it on their own, then like right then I'd be like, okay, that's it. You guys are fucking, you're done. We're done with you. All right, so that's my real point right there. And that is my prediction. I think that we're going to see in the near-term future, we're going to see the gloves come off. That's my prediction. All right, you guys respond to that. Who wants to go first?
I go ahead.
Jeremy, all right, you got it.
Off your point there, Mark, I did hear a couple different reports that, and we're actually kind of lucky that it wasn't Medvedev, the former president of Russia, that's currently in there right now, because he actually wanted to liquidate all of the top government officials in Ukraine, which, I mean, can you kind of blame the guy? I mean, I'm not condoning it, but it's like, from his perception, as you mentioned, Mark, like if we are to put ourselves in their shoes, like to him, that was probably an outright, like just the most egregious thing that you could do. And he's like, no, actually right now is probably a pretty good time to liquidate these people. And the reality of it is like, look, like if that's only one guy, how many other people within the Russian parliament or
their military staff?
Yeah, like how many of those people, and what I think we need to keep our eye on is not even so much how many of those people have that same thought process. I want to know what Putin's thinking, because he's been pretty calm and collected about this whole thing, and maybe it's for show, but I'm more interested in the guy that's quiet than I am about the people that are making a ruckus. That's just me. So there's obviously something that's going on. And another point that I want to make is I believe it was shortly after that situation that Wagner, the PMC group operating in Ukraine, now all of a sudden is getting all the arms and ammunition they could possibly ask for, when they were supposed to be out of Bakhmut and to regroup and reassess their situation by the 10th. Now, Prigozhin now is getting all of the stuff that he wants. So, like, to me, I think what you brought up, Mark, is it is a really big point to sit there and try and evaluate, right? Because it's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Yeah,
I mean,
huge.
We're not using that term lightly, although it sounds that, oh, it's a big deal. I'm a big deal around here. No, this is a big deal. and it's amazing to me, Jeremy, to your point. Now, there have been a few news outlets that has covered Wagner and the events that led up to, because they shot a video and made their appeal, made a statement, So there are some news outlets that are still kind of covering this and trying to cover it at least as objectively as they possibly can. But that really kind of has been brushed under the rug. The attempted assassination of Putin is being brushed under. Have you ever seen or heard anything about that? Like, this is like probably one of the most important things we can be talking about today. Not Dylan Mulvaney and Budweiser or whatever, which is another look. You could or the situation down in El Paso. These are real events and they have real consequences. But this event has the ultimate consequence. Right? Consequences. So, Russ, your response to what everything we're saying, or what I kind of threw out there I kind of like I kind of threw that that shit grenade out there just to see what would happen.
I mean, I didn't know about the whole Wagner stuff, so thanks for educating me on that. But Mark, you brought up such a good point about, like, think about it from their perspective. This just tried to happen. Of course, they're just gonna start pointing fingers and warming up the computers for launching stuff, because it's like, what else are they gonna do? And
you just tried to kill their head of state. Somebody just tried to. Well, again, the only thing is somebody. We don't know who those are, so that could be a multiple variables there. So it's either somebody really tried to kill the head of state or they faked it. That's all we can say with certainty right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the only reason, just from my perspective, right? Like, if I had to imagine being a fly on the wall, I think the only reason nothing has happened is because, even though there was a lot of blame that, the U.S. was behind it, everybody knows that that's not really our shtick. You know what I mean? Like we would make a lot more red herrings and a lot more guff about it and go about it a different way than just a bomb. Like, come on, we kill people differently.
No. So here, hey, this is the first podcast where we have dissenting opinions. I actually totally disagree with you. And my point of intersection is, if we are the ones who blew up Nord Stream, then the comment you just made is no longer correct. Previously in history, we kind of lost you again. I don't know if you can still hear us, Russ, but we lost your video. But if Russ's comment, now you're back. But so you see what I'm saying? Like, hey, I would have agreed with you 10 years ago, but not in the last 10 months. So just throwing that out there.
Well, I feel like I said, if I was a fly on the wall, I feel like the initial instinct that you're right. They're probably like, who is it? Who's responsible? Who has the most vested interest in Putin dying? But then I feel like somebody might have in the background been, you know what? There's a lot of Russians that hate us right now. Let's just take a second. Let's round up a bunch of dissenters, throw them in the torture chair, and just check first. Cause like, we don't want to be the bad guys if we launch something, and you know what I mean? Like, they want to feel justified. I guess that's how I hope it's going. Cause I mean, the reason that they haven't done something, there's got to be a good reason why they haven't done something yet. They haven't proven themselves to just be hold on a second, let's think this through kind of a country. So
here's my response to you right there. And this is, we're ending this on, I hope, because this is, to me, is the most interesting, salient, and dangerous portion of this conversation. So to use a modern, pop culture reference, if anybody watched that show, The Expanse. So there's this female. She's a really strong female. I think her character's name was Amanpour, something like, or I might be confusing her with a CNN reporter from back in the day, but it was something like that. And she was the head of the UN. So the UN is controlling the world. So that kind of, I didn't even think about it, but that's an example or analogy for this conversation we're having here about NATO and obligations. But so the world is now controlled by the UN. There is space travel, but it's not science fiction-y. It's a great show because it's really based in a lot of like these are the principles of physics and propulsion and all that kind of stuff. But humanity has expanded out in our solar system. Mars was once a colony. Now it's an independent nation, planet. Earth and Mars are having this conflict, And the UN Secretary General, this female, it becomes an election cycle for the new Secretary General. She loses out to somebody else. She lost the election. And as she's giving her goodbyes, and it's a moment like this, it's late at night. She's got a drink. She does a little video capture and gives it to her, her successor. And she says in this, she goes, "Hey, we disagree on this issue. Only one of us can be right. I really hope it's you, but but unfortunately, I think it's me." So to your point, Russ, that's my long-winded way of saying, and I said it already once. I hope you're right. I really do. But from what I'm seeing right now, the dots on the wall, how I'm reading them, I think you're wrong. I unfortunately don't. And that could be a completely another podcast because we're already at an hour and 30 minutes. And I hope I'm wrong here. I really hope I'm wrong. This is, hey, 2 months from now, send me an email, call me up and be like, dude, you owe me a case of beer because you were stupid. I hope that's the way it goes. But I fear I'm the one who's right here. I really do. So, all right, final comments, guys, on just that right there. So at the end of the day, what we were just, hopefully I didn't sidebars. I really think we have crossed the Rubicon, and I think Russia is going to have no choice, both in terms of military decision making, saving face on the world stage. I mean, again, supposedly somebody just tried to kill their head of state.
Yeah,
you cannot idly sit by. And then to Jeremy's point, I think the gloves are about to come off. And because then what do we do, Russ? Again, this goes into everybody who's watching. Leave a comment. Are we going to go to war with Russia over Ukraine?
No.
We're already almost 40, Jeremy, to the last video. I kind of saw this.
No.
It's like 38.9 and another $1 billion package is going through. No. So just call it $40 billion. $40 billion to Ukraine. And Ukraine's out there like telling everybody that they have to give them more money. And then my final comment here on this, and I don't want to forget this, is I look at this guy's politics. I'm not a fan of his, but it doesn't mean I can't agree with him in the places where I think he's right. And that's RFK Jr. He just came out and straight up said everything we just did in this podcast. That Ukraine's a boondoggle. It was all a setup. We, America and NATO, we're the ones who set this in motion back in 2014. He actually really knows his history. And again, we haven't really deep dived into the history here because you should go figure it out yourself. But just look at 2014, look at Crimea, and how Russia perceived things. Like everybody, Russia invaded Crimea. Well, why did they do that? What were we doing? Right. So Russ, to the point, that's matter of fact, that's my final, I guess, piece of example or piece of evidence to back up my claim that really we don't do these type of things.
Right.
We've kind of been like pissing in other people's sandboxes. So I'm not sure, man.
I more or less meant a bomb specifically, but I do.
But that just falls into it. I mean, it's just a degree of crazy. Yeah. You and I could be like, okay, so again, see the previous comment about proxy wars. You and I would have been like, well, we can't do this, but we can have this layer of, deniability. Like, oh no, that wasn't us. That was our client state, acted inappropriately, We're kind of crossing these lines. And if Nord Stream 2, I think there's more and more anecdotal evidence, if you want to say that, or in other words, you could also say the lack of evidence. See what I'm saying? Like, hey, if you can't produce the evidence that proves that Russia did it, you're only proving to me that, well, then somebody other than Russia did it.
Yeah,
it's kind of see what I'm saying. So we're already crossing this Rubicon, I think, unfortunately.
Right.
I hope I'm wrong. Again, everybody, 2 months from now, everybody on a podcast 2 months from now, chime in and say, hey, Mark, remember what you said on the 9th of April or May? Yeah, you were an idiot. Nothing happened. I hope that happens, and I'll buy everybody. I will gladly buy everybody a beer at that point.
Yeah,
you guys, final, give some final comments. And we'll take this out. We're at an hour 33 again to standards, not to time. Jeremy, just before you say anything, and Russ, there's got to be a part 3 because I'm already in my brain. I'm like, I didn't even talk about half the things I wanted to talk about. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yep. So on kind of just a closing segment here, I would like to kindly remind people that NATO also had they should have stayed out of the Kosovan Serbian conflict, but we all know how that went. And it, to be fair, like the Serbs did a fantastic job against the Kosovans, and they had NATO support, they had NATO weapons and stuff like that. They held on for a long time. But the point being is NATO has a really bad knack for being involved in shit that they as an entity they should not be involved in. That was a
Such
regional
as setting up an office
and
in Asia.
right. Well, yeah, and but that's just it. And it's like if you actually go back and you look at and I'm going to get somewhat historical here, Russ, and I know you might like that, but the Kosovan Serbian conflict, if I remember correctly, and I did some reading on this, it goes back to I think like 1300 something with the Turks.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So it's like, dude, there again is it's another thing that none of us will ever understand, but yet NATO and the United States had to get their willies wet and bomb the shit out of the Serbs because this is somehow our problem. Dude, this is older than both the United States and NATO has been around. And it's like, in the end of the day, it's like, oh, like we absolutely have to be involved in this conflict because of X, Y, and Z. No, you don't. And on one final point that I want to bring up, there has been, and it's been a couple weeks here, but I've been seeing increasing reports, which are all very like they're very much the same reports. They report the same thing, but it's been avoided on mainstream. And I would highly, highly encourage people to check this out. But so several weeks ago, there were reports that came out that the Russians retrofitting these bombs, right, these large, older bombs, supposedly there was a command structure in and around the area of Kyiv that was hit by one of these munitions. Now, supposedly, and again, I've seen several.
So that there, just before you go too deep, dark or not dark, but too deep on that, there has been all kinds of back and forth argument on that because there's a lot of things that don't make sense. And so I've heard some people try to debunk it, and I kind of agree with some of their positions. But I'm like, well, yeah, because that wouldn't make sense that there would be this many people of this rank or of this, but that doesn't mean it's not true. I mean,
and that's why I'm trying to walk on this with trepidation, and I want people to take this as it is. However, the fact that there are reports, but yet there's not even disagreement on mainstream news, also says a lot to me too. Because if they're not gonna come out on mainstream and be like, look, like this isn't true, this is patently false. Here's the data to show this, or here's this. But the point being, supposedly the Russians hit a command bunker in and around the area of Kiev that housed or had a meeting of high-ranking officials from the United States, from Ukraine, and in the greater NATO apparatus, which I think numbered to about 300 people roughly. And
I've heard reports that it put it between 250 and 300.
Right, it's roughly about that. But the depth, this is what's interesting. The depth was 100 meters below ground. So if that's true, if there is any truth to this, I'm just here to say the world is in deeper shit than we realistically think we're in if Russia has the ability to hit a command structure 100 meters underground. Look, like I said, I don't necessarily believe this with every fiber of my being, but I also don't disbelieve it simply because of the fact that the mainstream media should have a field day trying to disprove this, and they've done nothing of the sort. You've seen nothing about it on mainstream. What you have seen is independent outlets that have brought this up and they've reported on it. So it's concerning that there's been little to no dispute about this happening.
Jeremy, before you go, just to kind of rein you in, but so here, just to conclude what you're saying, let's give that another 30 days
Yes,
because,
100%.
instead of saying,
Yep.
well, I'm going to wait 24 hours. So
Yep.
I calm down. No, give
Yep.
this 30 days because how
Yep.
many other things? Look, the Hunter Biden laptop, right? Just by even
Right.
mentioning it, we're probably going to get in trouble with YouTube, but and if we get flaked, I'll be like, okay, show me where I'm wrong. I mean, this is agreed upon. Everybody and all the people who said it was false are now like having to like, eat crow and say, well, okay, and then they come up with their own obfuscations for why they lied, and they misled people. But so give it 30 days. So another, thing.
Right.
Hey, let's just see if more information has come out 30 days from now. But because you are raising some great points. I mean, and that's what Russ and I were just saying. Hey, just because like, matter of fact, I think the point we were saying is like when people aren't talking about it, isn't that more evidence that it really actually just probably happened? Again, Nord Stream,
the likelihood goes way up.
Yeah. Probability starts.
Yep. So
all right,
I'm
Russ.
gonna leave it at that.
Well,
and Jeremy, I'm sorry. The only reason before Russ, I just got to conclude because I just want to not get us in too much trouble. We're still
100%,
right. You know what I'm saying? I just didn't want you to go too far down that rabbit hole too soon. Right? Okay.
So I mean, I think that I've really said all that I wanted to. I think that I think that NATO is pointless and inept, and it doesn't have any of the jurisdiction that it was supposed to. So I and all the is when you were mentioning NATO's involvements, it just comes back to why are we sticking fingers in other people's soup? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And look, because I feel like this is gonna come up later. I should just clear it up now. I don't like war. Okay, I don't like it.
Nobody should.
I don't like to see suffering and anything like that. But I have another part of me that also the left brain clinical thinker side. We don't have any predators anymore. So, we got to have something to reduce the population of the planet before we outgrow it. So, again, let's just leave other countries to fight their fights and reset their population count. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that that's such a crappy thing to say, but we've got no business forming a club of, hey, don't do that, Karens. You know what I mean? Like, it's a waste. Let's pull out. let's let that go to ashes.
It's now called NATO, North Atlantic Karen Organization. To call it a bunch of Karens, you just nailed it right there.
The Kens and Karens, yeah.
Seriously, awesome. Home fucking run, Russ. Boom. Home run. Run. Smack.
Nice.
You just heard the crack of the bat that Russ just put on your backside.
Way to Babe Ruth it.
Yeah. Hey, my final comments are actually going to go a little bit in a slightly different direction, but based kind of on what Russ just said before he, cracked it out at an over center field wall. Again, another point where I think, would be a great podcast and disagree. The world can sustain, millions more human beings. We're not even close to overpopulating this planet or depleting our resources. But with an eye towards the future, knowing that, again, it's a mathematical equation, like there's this many people, we know when, if we put aside the bullshit politics, we will know this. Just like when people talk about oil, well, like, okay, take the planet, figure out what the core is, everything else. You could just say everything in the middle was oil. Here's how much we consume. Here's how much you would know when oil, again, it's math. Yeah. This shit works.
Yeah.
But to your point, I mean, we're nowhere even near or close to that. But why aren't we exploring space? Like, that is the thing, in my opinion, so you want to have an alliance? I'm okay. Okay. So this would not be an entanglement in my mind. Let's all work together to find out what the fuck is out there. Really, Bakhmut, Kiev, Iraq. Seriously, this is what we're squabbling over, people? Like, this is our fucking thing? Like, no, we have the capability, the technology, the resources, the incredibly bright minds, men and women out there. Why? I don't know about the rest of you guys and gals, and I'm not just talking Jeremy and Russ, everybody watching this. whenever I can, I'm outside looking at the stars. Just like, it's so fascinating. Like, man, don't you want to know what's out there? And don't you want to, like, why aren't we already on the moon? I'm
Not
serious.
to interject, Mark, but
yeah, I'm sorry. If you do, but bring it back to NATO, because I just started rambling about space exploration.
I'm gonna mess this up even more. But if anybody
don't do it.
If anybody has it, look, if anybody has a chance to look at stars under night vision, please do.
Yeah.
Please do.
Okay.
My God, that's all I have to say.
Hey, that was actually better than I thought where you were going to go. So I thought you were going to go somewhere completely. So, all right. So my final comment, though, on all this bringing into NATO is, I guess I think if you're watching this video, see, we all are, the three of us have a slightly different perspective, but we are approaching it kind of from the same general direction, and our end thoughts and comments are kind of the same. You're talking to three individuals, whether you like us, hate us, think we're idiots, whatever, but we've all independently come to our own conclusion, which is shrugging of the shoulders, eyebrows, like, why are we even in NATO? This makes, matter of fact, I can come up with a million reasons why we shouldn't be in NATO, and which I think that was one of the attempts. That's what we were trying to attempt in this video, is to also illustrate to you, like, are we really going to do this? And that was my final point. It's like, we've wasted $40 billion for a country who's not even in NATO under the auspices of NATO. This is what we must do. And we've created a scenario in which the enemy, quote unquote, which we created, again, do your own research. Listen to what RFK just said. I don't believe that guy politically, but that doesn't mean he, isn't right on this. He made a really good comment like a day or 2 days ago, talking about why we're fighting in Ukraine. Guy, just like Russ did. Yeah. He hit a home run with that comment that he made, that little interview he did. Yeah. A lot of his other politics, I could give a shit less about. I think he's just another, another politician like all the rest of them, but that doesn't mean he was wrong on his comments about NATO. So my point is, why would we do this? We're wasting money. We're wasting resources. We're depleting our own ability to defend our own country. And if you're a NATO signatory, if you're watching this over in Europe or any place else, you should be saying the same damn thing. Yeah. You guys couldn't fight off a bunch of Cro-Magnons with sticks right now. Right.
Yep.
That's my thing. Jeremy, why don't you take us out? Or Russ, you get one last comment, and then Jeremy's going to take us out.
Go ahead, Russ.
Well, just to your point, Mark, I just realized, if we weren't trying to do any of this, I'm what ifing, excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm what ifing. But if we weren't as NATO, like Jeremy was saying, if we weren't involved in all this and someone still tried to take Putin out, would we have been at the end of his pointing finger? No. So this is just more reason to quit this shit. Quit putting a finger in other people's soups.
Doesn't put a target on our backs.
Yeah. Leave them be. Crying out loud. Let them fight their wars and do it on their own. They don't need us.
Well, before we go to Jeremy, so it's something I used to say, and I haven't said this in a long time, but to your point, Russ, I used to say, hey, when you guys grow up, we're in the phone book. In other words, I got nothing to do. When you guys grow up, we're in the phone book. Give us a call when you're adults, and we'll sit and figure out how we can be better humans and reach for the stars together or something like that. But all right, Jeremy. Hey, boss, why don't you? We're at I almost said a minute 47.
Every time, Mark.
One of these podcasts, I will not make that mistake. We're at an hour 47 right now. Jeremy, why don't you just go ahead and make a final comment? And why don't you just take us out, and we'll just follow your lead as you take us out. Sir.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to kind of spin off of this a little bit. Look, in the end of the day, to kind of what Russ is saying, you don't have a target on your back if you're not involved with other people who are colluding to do whatever. And I use the word colluding because let's be honest, they all sit in this NATO delegation. They're like, hey guys, what do you think about this idea? And some people might be like, dude, you're kind of off kilter, but we have to agree with it because our stockpiles are at your behest, right? So
or our stocks are at your behest.
And so seriously, in the end of the day, right? The crazy ones get a voice when it's just if we weren't part of NATO, we're like, better you than us, but I will say, Mark brought up NATO signatories. Like, look, like do a favor, bring your militaries home and defend your own countries, rebuild your stockpiles, have an investment in your own countries, and I have to
really care about your own people.
Right. And here's the thing, right? When you need your defense, you know what you have when your military is not spread thin throughout the globe? You have a strong defense. When your military is what is it like? What's the number now? It's like it's almost 300 different areas like that we have military bases plus. It's like, dude, like what are we defending? What are we defending in 300 plus different military bases? It's certainly not the United States. You can't sit there and tell me that you have a common interest in the United States, much less any other country that's got military bases all over. The French in Africa and many other places. Like, dude, like if you think that your country's interest is truthfully invested in defense, yet you're allowing your elected officials or your bureaucrats or whatever you want to call them to literally open up military bases in places that they have no responsibility to defend, they have no obligation to defend because it's not their own people, then you're being played. As a people, you're being played, and that's what NATO is. It's a big court gesture game to where I'm going to say this, like to where you have delegates that get embroiled in this realm of self-masturbation about how amazing NATO is, and what comes of it? You lose your sovereignty, you lose your stockpiles, you lose your economy, and you're left with nothing out in the rain looking for a ride that's never coming, right? Like this is what NATO is. And I'll extend it even further. This is what the UN is. Look, bring your people home.
No. Keep it. Yeah. Don't go down the UN.
Yeah. No, but I'm just saying, like, look, this is what entanglements get you.
There you go.
And to be fair, like you brought up Robert Kennedy Jr., he wants to bring people home too. Why not now more than ever should we bring people? Why shouldn't we bring our people home and defend our borders and stay out of everybody else's squabbles? You know why? Because there's too much money to be made. There's too many deals to be made. And Raytheon and all of these other corporations would lose their asses if we weren't perpetually involved in war. And what this is going to be is it's going to be doom for everybody because there's only one. What's that?
No, I finish your statement now.
No, yeah, no. Like Mark has pointed out, there is only one extra area of escalation that this is going to end up in, and nobody wins. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is NATO's not good for anybody. There is no long game. There is no short game. There is none of this. Nothing that actually benefits anybody. So on that note, that's just my perspective. I don't speak for Mark. I don't speak for Russ, but that's just my perspective. And on that note, I think we had a great show today, guys. I think we're able to interject a lot of our thoughts, our opinions, and bring up a lot of really good topics. And I don't really have anything else. Russ, Mark, do you guys have anything else?
Oh, I'm good.
One just small comment. What struck me as kind of funny, and that's why you were still talking, and I my mouth wouldn't stop from opening. But when you're talking about who does this benefit and whatever, and like to me that's also the sad and the scary part is because you were going down the Raytheon and in the the military industrial complex, the senior leaders both in the the political realm and the military realm, that's who benefits. The 3 of us and anybody who's watching this podcast are the people who are over there sleeping in the mud. And if you've never been in that, again, you don't even know. Yeah, see, I'm not going to say much more because I'll start opening.
This is for part 3, Mark.
Yeah, we'll save that for part 3. So just take a step back and say, hey, and ask yourself who are the people who are promoting this and why, and then as always, follow the money.
Yes,
I mean, and listen to, and if you get a chance, and matter of fact, I'll make a note here right now. I kind of already wrote it down, but I'll make another little addition. If I can find the clip of what RFK just said, RFK Jr. about Ukraine and NATO, I'll put the link in this video so you can watch it. But if I can't find it, whatever, just, use your own search engine and try to find it. So today is the 9th of May. I think he just said it on yesterday on the 8th of May. So look around that between 7 and 9 May time frame statement by RFK Jr. as it pertains to why we're in Ukraine or what led us to get to Ukraine. I mean, if 90% of Americans only just watch that, and even if you don't do your own historical deep dive to know exactly what he's talking about, but if you were like, I mean, that was objective fact. These are the things that happened. This is the sequence of events that have led us to this place where we are now. Well, hello,
Right. Yep.
Russ, nothing else? Come on, give us a joke. We went a little bit long. Give us a little something good.
I kind of want it to go out on this note. I want people to think hard, think hard, think realistically. Yeah, I don't want to sully the good things that we've done here today by your dad. Although I do have some jokes, so let's do that another time.
Are they off-air jokes?
Hey, there it is.
No, they're dead.
Jeremy,
nobody likes those.
Jeremy, take us out. I mean, on Russ's.
All right,
we got a good thing going. Hey, let's all hang out after I hit end. But Jeremy, take us out on that then.
Yeah. So with that, everybody, again, to Russ's point, dude, and to Mark's point, do your own research. We literally are just 3 dudes sitting here having conversations about real world things, and they do affect us. They affect everybody in each NATO country, in my opinion. And I would highly encourage and implore people to take a strong, questioning, objective look at whether or not you and your people, whether it's us as Americans or you as Norwegians or Finns or whatever, look, think about the ramifications and whether or not this is where you want to go, if this is the situation you want to be in. Because look, I'm here to tell you, this is one of those situations to where when you start down this path, it will get it. I believe we've crested the point of you don't get to turn back from this.
Or it's really hard.
Yeah, it'll be very, very difficult if there's even that little chance left. And what that's going to take is you getting out there and getting active. And this is why we started this. We will provide you with discussions to hopefully get you active, to get out there, to make meaningful changes, to do the things that you have to do to preserve you as a people, whether, like I said, whether it's in the United States or wherever, to take an interest in what goes on in your space and to get you guys active to make that change. So I hope that we're able to provide compelling arguments today and different perspectives and different points of views. We greatly appreciate everybody that stops by, that has comment. Please take the time to comment. We really want to engage everybody, and whether we think you're right, wrong, or indifferent, let's have a conversation. And like Mark said in the onset of this, look, any one of you could end up on these videos if there's a really good, compelling conversation to be had there. So with that being said, again, greatly appreciate it. And we will see you all on the next one. And it will be coming soon. So
cheers, everybody. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. Huge thanks to Russ for taking the time again out of his life. Thank you, Russ. Now. Yeah, hats off to Russ. Hats off to everybody watching the video. Thank you very much. A little sip of the good stuff for you. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
See you later. Thank you.
And ending it. Well, there we go.